Well, good morning, everyone. I see that we have over 50 participants on our call this morning. On behalf of Nipissing University, I'd like to welcome you to this webinar. My name is Kevin Walmsley, and I'm the President and Vice Chancellor of Nipissing University. And I would like to extend greetings to everyone who is visiting us today virtually from many countries of the world. And I want to extend greetings on behalf of our university, which is located in beautiful North Bay, Canada. So I want to tell you how excited we are that you have selected Nipissing University as your destination and that you are coming to Canada. So congratulations to all of you on making that decision. And I'm sure you've already seen our beautiful campus in photographs and in videos, and soon you're going to be walking amongst many other students on this campus. And so we're very excited about that. What you may not realize is that our staff and our professors are preparing for your arrival and are also very excited to have you as part of the student body at Nipissing University. And so we're preparing to welcome you. Professors are in their research mode right now, and we'll be preparing for classes that begin in September and preparing for the winter term as well. And our staff members, of course, are standing at the ready to assist you in your course selections and your transition into these new programs. And I see that there's a lot of variety on the call today. There are some students who are entering undergraduate programs. There are some students who are entering graduate programs, and some who are beginning post-baccalaureates. So many exciting changes for you in your lives as you plan your visit to Canada. And I want to commend you all in the first instance for making this decision and leaving your hometowns and leaving your home countries. That is a huge decision for you. And I want to say that it takes a lot of courage for you to embark on such a journey. So you should be proud of this. I know you'll be a little bit nervous, but you can rest assured that there are many people who are waiting for you to arrive and waiting to assist you to help you with your journey to Canada and your journey to North Bay and to Nipissing University. And so that's the reason for this seminar this morning. It can be a complicated process for you to navigate, but we have experts on our webinar today who are going to assist you with this process. And we have, you can see Elizabeth is there, Elizabeth Long is there, and Zia Sumar is there as well. So welcome to you both. And you can also see Laura, who's our Director of International, the International Office here at Nipissing University, who are prepared to provide you with very useful information and, more importantly, to answer your questions. So I hope you're looking forward to this morning's seminar wherever you are in the world. And I can tell you that I can't wait to meet you on our campus very soon. Very excited about that. And make sure that you stop by to see me and tell me who you are and where you're from, because it's so exciting. And that's the reason for doing education in other countries, is to get to know each other and to get to learn about each other. And so I'm very much looking forward to meeting all of you. And I hope you have a very good seminar this morning. I wish you all the best. And so now I'll turn it over to Zaya and Elizabeth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Well, it's a pleasure to be here this morning with you guys. And congratulations on taking such an important step for the next step in your career and also in your lives and coming to a brand new country. And I have to say, you guys are making a very good choices from a perspective of an immigration lawyer. I think Nipissing University is one of the best situated places in terms of immigration, and you will see when we go through our presentation for students to get permanent residence because of where it's situated, because it's a university, and also because it has such caring staff. There's not many schools and universities where they will provide this kind of information to you from the very beginning on your immigration journey. And it's very important that you guys are here because immigration is all about planning. It's all about having to make your decisions and your plans as early as possible so that you don't waste time, you don't waste energy and money in going the wrong direction. Okay, so now before we start our presentation, I just wanted to give you guys a few pointers. The Q&A button that you will see on the bottom of your screen is where you can post your questions. So Zia and I will go through our PowerPoint presentation, but you can type in your questions along there. And at the end, we'll see how much time we have. We will try to answer as many questions as we can for you guys. Okay? All right, let's get started. Okay. So today we have a few parts that we're going to be talking about. The first thing that we want to talk about is temporary residence. All of you guys, when you come to Canada, you're going to have a study permit. And when you get your study permit, you will see that there is an end date to your study permit. That's because you guys are temporary residents. First, we are going to talk about what you guys need to know as temporary residents, and then later to get your work permits. And then afterwards, we'll talk about permanent residence.
Perfect. Sorry. So like Elizabeth said, when you come to Canada, you'll have your study permits. And on those study permits are expiry dates. And it's really important that while you're here in Canada, you're keeping your status, that you're always have your temporary residence while you're physically in Canada. And so one part of that is some of you may get study permits that expire before the end of your program. It's really important that you apply to extend your status so that you're able to continue studying in Canada. Now, as long as you submit an extension application, even if you don't have a decision on that extension application before the expiry date of your permit, you'll hold what's called implied or maintained status. So that allows you to continue studying in Canada while you're waiting for a decision on that extension application. Now, really important though, in order to get that implied status, you do have to submit your extension application properly. And what I mean by that is you have to make sure that it's a complete application, that it's filed before the expiry date of your permit. If there's something like, let's say you forget to pay the application fees, then it's an incomplete application. It's like as if you had not filed your extension application. And what that means is now you've lost status. So let's say you forget to apply or you forget to pay the fees when you're applying. Like I said, it's like you have not filed your extension application and you are now out of status. Well, when you're out of status, you have the ability to apply for what's called a restoration. So this is for an individual who has now lost status and is applying to get their status back. But there is a timeline. So you do need to make sure that when you're applying for restoration, you file within 90 days of losing your status. So there's a 90-day period from the date that you lose your status in order for you to submit a restoration application to get your status back.
Okay, so another concept that you guys have to understand is the difference between high-skilled work and low-skilled work. The way that it's currently classified in immigration law is that all occupations in Canada are classified in 5 different occupations, and they're coded O, A, B, C, and D. Okay, so O, A, and B are considered high skilled, and C and D are considered low skilled. The reason why we talk about this right now is because you will see when we get to permanent residence that the government makes a huge emphasis on what kind of code your work is. Most of the time, only high skilled work will qualify for work for permanent residence. So it's very important when you guys, you know, when we're going to apply for permanent residence, that you guys understand the work that you've done, whether or not it's high skilled or low skilled, and also the jobs that you will take, whether or not it's high skilled and low skilled. Oftentimes, you know, for people who don't really understand immigration law, they might graduate and get the work permit and then work in jobs that they think is great for immigration, and it's actually not. And then at the end of it, when they come to me and they're running out of time on their work permits, you know, they'll say, oh, look, this is my experience. And I said, oh, unfortunately, you wasted your time doing something that will not qualify you for immigration. Okay, so it's very important for you to understand whether something is high skilled or whether something is low skilled. Now, the current system has this 5 category, but soon there is going to be a new system that will be implemented in later this year. And in this system, there is going to be 6 levels. They're called tiers, T-E-E-R. And it's going to be 0, 1, 2, and 3 are going to be high skilled, and 4 and 5 are going to be low skilled. And, you know, some of the occupations that were previously classified as high skilled are no longer going to be classified as high skilled, but there are going to be a lot of new occupations that are going to be classified as high skilled that weren't previously classified as high skilled. Okay. By the way, since you guys have registered for this webinar, we are going to put you guys on our list of people to receive notifications on important program changes to immigration. Okay. And so, because the only way that we can really, you know, let you guys know for changes like this when they take place is through our newsletters. If you guys have friends who want to sign up, they can go to our website to sign up. We will just sign you up automatically. If you don't like getting those, feel free to just unsubscribe as well. Okay.
So on your study permit, like we talked about, there's some conditions that are obvious, like the expiry date that we talked about. But there's also some other conditions that are not as obvious. They're implied on you, so you're expected to know them. One of them is that you're actively pursuing your studies. So what IRCC means by this is that while you're here in Canada on your study permit, you're expected to be making progress towards the completion of your program. So once you stop studying, whether it's that you finish your program of study early or you leave your program, as soon as you stop studying, as soon as you are no longer actively pursuing your studies here, you actually lose status 90 days from when you stop studying. So that study permit, regardless of the expiry date that's listed on it, becomes invalid 90 days following when you stop studying. And like I said, this can apply to, you know, if you decide to leave your program, if you finish your program early, any reason for stopping your studies here in Canada, you have a period of 90 days left on your study permit, unless the expiry date is earlier, then of course it's the expiry date. Now, the exceptions to that, there's 2 of them. The first is if you're on a scheduled break. What we mean by that is where your program, when you look at the academic calendar of your program at your school, if there is a break that's incorporated into your academic calendar, that is considered a scheduled break. So IRCC refers back to the school to determine what is a scheduled break. Okay, so let's say, for example, you're doing a 3-year program and the academic calendar for your program is 2 semesters of school, 1 semester of summer, and your summer is a break from the program. That's fine. During that period of time, you're able to not be studying and it won't affect your status here in Canada. The second exception is if you're on an authorized leave. So this is where you, for whatever reason, need to take a leave from your studies. You do need to get approval from the school. It does have to be written approval from the school that's authorizing you to take a break, to take a leave from your studies. So again, the condition on your study permit is that you do need to be actively pursuing your studies, and the 2 exceptions to that are if you're on a scheduled break or you have an authorized leave.
And I just wanted to also emphasize that, like Zia was saying, just because you have a study permit now doesn't mean that you're home free for the next, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 years. Okay, you have to keep your status. If you don't actively study or go on authorized leave, like Zia said, you will lose your status. So what we're telling you is no joke. Okay, immigration is very, very unforgiving. They don't care. You can tell them, oh, they don't care. Okay, whatever it is, they don't care. Okay, just keep that in mind. So whatever it is, you have to follow the rules. Otherwise, you could be kicked out of the country. All right.
Your study permit also does allow you to to work while you're here in Canada. So if you are a full-time student, without needing then a separate work permit, you're actually able to work in Canada. Now, as a full-time student, you are able to use your study permit to work up to 20 hours a week while you are in your semester of study, and full-time during any regularly scheduled break. So again, we go back to the definition we just talked about when we're talking about what is a scheduled break. So again, that's 20 hours a week during the school year and full-time during any scheduled break. Now, like I said a moment ago, you do need to be a full-time student in order to be able to use your study permit to work off campus. The exception to that is when you are in your final semester of your program, if you only need a part-time course load in order to complete your program, and so now you've registered as a part-time student in that final semester, that's okay. You are still able to use your study permit to work off campus, but that exception is only for the last semester where you no longer need a full-time course load in order to complete your program. Now, once you have completed your program, so once you have received any written confirmation that you have met the requirements of your program, you're no longer considered a student. And so what that means is that you do have to stop working using your study permit. You're no longer able to work using that study permit. When we're talking about when you have finished your program, it's the earliest time that you received any written confirmation from the school that you have met the requirements of your program. So that could be your final grades being released. It could be a letter from the school, an email, anything that indicates to you that you've now completed your program of study. That also means that you do have to stop working using your study permit. If once you're done your first program, you're going to be doing a second program of study, and you've already been accepted in that second program and your study permit is still valid, you are able to work in between programs. As long as the time between those two programs, the end date of the first and the start date of the second, is less than 150 days.
Also, to add to that, this is all about working off campus. You are able, if you're full-time students, to work on campus as well. And there is no limitations to that. So if you wanted to do TARA work or even work in the bookstore or the library in the university, you can do that full-time. And I don't know if there's any restrictions by the school for you guys to do work full-time on campus and do off-campus work as well. But you can do full-time on campus, part-time off campus. Although if you do that, I don't know when you'll be able to study at all. Yeah, so again, emphasizing our points of this is the law. It doesn't matter. In Canada, we don't allow people to say, I didn't know the law. Mistake of law is not an excuse, okay? So that's why we are telling you guys right now what the law is so that you guys hopefully don't make mistakes along the way. All right, now we're going to talk about the post-graduation work permit. One of the biggest advantages for students in Canada is the post-grad work permit. And this is one of the reasons I advise a lot of people who want to immigrate to Canada to go to school in Canada. And you have to go to a public university or college in order to be eligible for a post-grad work permit. There are a lot of schools that advertise and say, oh, come and study with us, we're a great school and you can, it's cheap and etc. But if they're private schools, you will not be eligible for a post-grad work permit. Okay, now the post-grad work permit is a golden ticket. Okay, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the golden ticket. How many golden tickets do you get in your life? One. Okay, you don't get any other second chances. And that's why it's very important to do your planning for immigration for permanent residence very, very early on, because the program that you undertake corresponds to how long your postgrad work permit is. So if it is between 8 months and 2 years, you only get a work permit that is equal to that amount. If it's 2 years or more, you get a 3-year work permit. And that is what I call a deal, okay? I like deals, not only for myself, but also for you guys, because oftentimes you will likely need that 3-year buffer in order to get the work experience and get your permanent residence, all right? Now, sometimes people, you just do a 1-year program and then you say, oh no, that's not enough for a work permit. I only have 1-year work permit. I might not even get a job until like 6 months down the road. And then I can, if I need 1 year of work experience, how am I going to do that? What you can do is you can do another 1-year program. And if you finish that second 1-year program within 2 years of you completing the first 1-year program, then you can be eligible for a 3-year work permit as well. So 1 + 1 = 3, okay? Now, very, very important. In order to qualify for a postgrad work permit, you have to maintain full-time status at school during every semester of the program, except in the last semester, okay? So, sometimes people come to me and say, you know what, Elizabeth, I am having some difficulty. Maybe it's finances, maybe it's mental health, maybe it's, my family is sick back home, etc. I'm just gonna do a part-time studies, can I do that? And I said, no, actually, you know what you should do? Go to the school, tell them what your situation is, and ask them if they can give you authorized leave for the entire semester, okay? In that case, then you can still get qualified for the postgrad work permit at the end. But if you just do part-time studies, very likely you will be denied your postgrad work permit at the end. You can try to tell the officer what it is that prevented you from, but a lot of times they don't care. Okay, running theme, immigration does not care. Okay, now so full-time status at school every semester. Let's talk about when you have to apply for your postgrad work permit. This is very, very important because we see a lot of people waste this opportunity to get the postgrad work permit just because they didn't do it properly. They didn't apply at the right time. Okay, and the immigration website Ircc website is very, very misleading as well. When you go onto the Ircc website, they will tell you that you have 180 days to apply for your postgrad work permit. I am here to tell you that based on what they're saying, if you think you're fine to just go and apply for your postgrad work permit within 179 day on the 179 day and just apply for it without doing anything else, you will get it denied and you will have been out of status for 3 months. Okay, so here is what you need to understand. You need to understand, you want to apply for your postgrad work permit while you still have student status. And your student status is based on 2 things. One, do you still have a valid study permit? When does your study permit expire? You need to take a look at that the minute you get your study permit. Okay, and you need to put the end date on your calendar and have 3 reminders of when your study permit is still valid, because you will need to apply for something before it expires. Okay, so you need to apply for your postgrad work permit, first of all, before your study permit expires. The second condition is you need to apply for your postgrad work permit when you still have student status. And that is not necessarily when your study permit expires. Remember what Zia had told you guys in the very beginning? Why did we start with that? When do you lose your status? You lose your status within 90 days of when you stop studying. So if the school notifies you on, let's say, April 30th, that you've completed all of your requirements. That's not when you're getting your degree or your diploma or your certificate, okay? It is when they notify you. Maybe you got a transcript. Maybe it's on your online portal that you've completed your program. The first indication is when the clock starts ticking. From that point, you have 90 days, even if your study permit has not expired, you have 90 days to file your post-grad work permit. So the deadline is 90 days from when you've first get notice that you've completed your program or your study permit validity date, whichever comes first, okay? Why does the IRCC website say 180 days? It's because it allows people, it used to be, the rule used to be 90 days. They put it to 180 days because sometimes people apply and they don't do it right, their application gets denied. In that case, then you can file for restoration and then you'll have another chance if you file it within 180 days. But during that period, if you don't file your work, if you apply for your work permit within that 90 days and study permit validity date, that deadline, you can start working as soon as you apply, okay? But if you apply after that period of time, you have to file the restoration of status and you cannot work until you actually get your work permit. All right. Okay, let's move on to permanent residence. Now, permanent residence, there are quite a few different programs, especially because you guys are studying in Nipissing, North Bay, which is Rnet city. You guys are outside of Ontario, outside of the Greater Toronto area, which is also a very big advantage as well. First thing I'm going to talk about, though, is I'm going to talk about the federal program, which is express entry. So the federal program, where it's available to all, everyone who wants to go to anywhere outside of Quebec. If you want to go to Quebec, this is not available to you. And let me assure you that this is a much better system than anything that is available in Quebec, okay? So express entry in a nutshell goes like this. First, you have to create an online profile. In order to create an online profile, you have to qualify under one of three categories: the Federal Skilled Worker class, Canadian Experience class, or the Federal Skilled Trades class. Once you qualify, you get to enter into the express entry pool. But let me make this clear. Just because you enter the pool does not mean that you have applied for permanent residence, okay? People often make this mistake that they tell me, oh, I've applied for express entry. I said, when did you receive your invitation to apply? I haven't received, I just put myself in the pool. You have not applied for permanent residence. The government does not consider you to have applied for permanent residence. You're just a candidate to be invited to apply at this point. When you enter the pool, you'll be issued a score based on your background and whether or not you have provincial nomination. And every 2 weeks or so, the government issues a draw where they invite people to apply, okay? They base that invitation on what your score is, for the most part. And sometimes, especially during COVID, they had based it on what category you qualified under. In the future, there may be even more because they just passed legislation where they will have more criteria as to when they issue the invitation to apply. But that's not right now, okay? Again, we will notify you. Immigration law in Canada changes on a dime, okay? We will notify you guys if you're on the newsletter when really important changes happen that may affect you. Okay, so first let's talk about how to get into the pool. The first category, many of you may already qualify to get into the pool, okay? Getting in doesn't mean that you're gonna get out, okay? It's but let's talk about how to get into the pool. So first of all, the work experience that you need to get in under the Federal Skilled Worker Program is work experience where you have 1 year of high skilled. We talked about what high skilled was, right? Work experience that is continuous, no breaks in between, and it is a full-time, measures to 1,360 hours, which is equal to 30 hours a week on average, okay? And it has to be in one occupation. So for that 1 year, you have to only be in one occupation, okay? You don't have to have the same employer, but it has to be in the same occupation. Now, notice that I didn't say that this work experience had to be in Canada. I didn't say that this work experience had to be when you're not a full-time student. And you can be self-employed as well. Okay, so we have, for example, a lot of master's, PhD students get this work experience doing RATA work on campus, or you could have had the work experience outside of Canada as well. After you have, if you have this work experience, we will measure your other scores based on your language and education. This is skilled worker. It's not the CRS score for express entry. You have to meet a minimum score of 67, and you need to have a certain amount of funds in your account. So normally around 14,000 for single person. If you have a company, family member, spouse, and children, you'll add a few thousand for each family member. Okay, so this is a federal skilled worker class. We have a lot of people who've never even come to Canada who can qualify under the federal skilled worker class. The problem is that a lot of times, unless you are a super person, you know, your points later on to get out of the pool may not be enough. Also, during COVID, the government had a great emphasis on not the federal skilled worker class, but on the Canadian experience class. So in fact, all of last year, no federal skilled workers were selected at all. Now this year, it just started again in July that they have now been selecting federal skilled worker class candidates, but the points have been very, very high. Let me talk about the Canadian experience class. The Canadian experience class is for people who have this kind of work experience. The work experience is at least 1 year in the last 3 years of application. And it is work experience that you gained in Canada when you are not a full-time student. So the work experience for the Canadian experience class, to qualify for this, you can't get while you're in school. You can only get after you've graduated, and you know, you will start counting the hours then. And you also have to pass, you know, language scores for both of these. Most of you, if you're in Nipissing, you'll pass the language score to get into the pool. That is not necessarily going to be enough to get out of the pool. We'll talk about that in a bit. Okay. The third one, I'm not going to talk too much about. It's for skilled trades, people in the construction industry. All right. Now, let's say you get into the pool. What is your score? Because you want to get out of the pool afterwards. Okay. You want to get your invitation to apply. So what are the factors that will contribute to your score then? The first thing is age. Basically, when you get to your 30s, every birthday is no longer going to be a happy birthday. Okay, every birthday in your 30s will minus your points 5 or 6 points. When you get to your 40s, fast slide, minus 10, minus 11. The good thing is 45, you can stop worrying about it because you know your points don't go down anymore after that. But the bad news is that you get a big fat 0 at that point. So nothing you can do about age except don't wait. If you qualify and you can get in, you might want to start doing that before you get older and your age points start getting lower. Education. If you have a bachelor's degree, that is great. And if you have a second program on top of that, that is even better. Okay. Language is very, very important. The language points, especially if you don't have Canadian work experience, you need to have for IELTS, you need to have a good chance, I would say you need at least 7s in reading, writing, and speaking, and 8 in listening for the IELTS. And so you need that level, or French if you have French as well. The relevant Canadian work experience, that's the work experience that is the same as what I described for the Canadian experience class. So the work experience that you get after you graduate in Canada, that's the one that you will count. Now, keep in mind that this work experience, you have to be employed. You cannot be a self-employed person. So when you do look for work, make sure you are going to get a T4, and you're going to get income tax deducted from your salary, CPP-EI. That's what being an employee in Canada means, okay? If you go and you find a job with an employer and they say, oh, we're going to hire you as a contractor, I don't want to bother my accountant, that work experience will not count towards your points here. Foreign work experience, also important if it's high skilled and if it's at least 1 year of work experience. Your spouse, if you have a spouse, and what we define as spouse in Canada is not just someone you're married to. If you have been living with someone for at least 1 year in a conjugal relationship, then you are common law with them. Now, very important that on your forms, they will ask you, what is your marital status? Are you common law? Are you married? Are you single? If you are common law with someone, it's very important that you do not misrepresent your marital situation. You have to say that you're common law. If you say that you're not common law and you're single, that's misrepresentation. That could get you banned from Canada for 5 years. And also, it could bar you from applying for permanent residence for your partner and sponsoring them, or even having them accompany you, like apply together with you as your family member as well. Okay, so very important. If you have lived with someone for 1 year, not as roommates, of course, but in a conjugal relationship, then you are common law. You have to declare that. So if you have a spouse, common law or married, you want to add them to your application. Normally, I recommend that you highly recommend that you do. Then their education, language, and work experience, Canadian work experience, could contribute to your points. Otherwise, if they're not a super spouse, it's around the same, maybe a few points lower, but it's around the same. Provincial nominee programs. Zia is going to be talking about this. Provincial nominee programs are programs where the Ontario government and other provinces, they have their own programs to select people that they want to get permanent residence. So there are express entry linked provincial nominee programs and non-express entry linked provincial nominee programs. The only programs that will give you points, and you'll get 600 points if you get nominated under an express entry linked provincial nominee program. Okay, Zia is going to talk about that in a few minutes. So if you've studied in Nipissing in a university, in a program that's a university program that's a bachelor's, 3 years or more, or if you do a master's or PhD program, you get 30 points. Otherwise, it's 15 points. Arranged employment. You guys don't normally get arranged employment because your work permits for the post-grad work permits are open work permits. You need to get an employer-specific work permit or LMIA. If you have brothers or sisters who are Canadians or permanent residents, you'll get 15 points for that. Fluency in French. You'll see throughout our presentation that people who are francophones, who are fluent in French, you have a huge advantage in applying for permanent residence. So you will get significant points, for example, in express entry if you're fluent in French. This is trade certification that's for people in the construction trades. Okay, so taking a look at this, some of you might be very confident and say, no problem, I'm fantastic. Other people may have a little bit of a headache. You know, you might say, oh my God, this is a lot. Maybe I can qualify. Maybe I'm a little bit older. Maybe my language skills aren't that fantastic. Or, you know, I don't know. Okay. So first of all, this is just a general information for you. We can calculate your specific points. You know, if you come for a consultation, we will do your specific points. So don't assume anything in particular. And also the programs do change a lot in terms of the points. So for example, express entry in before COVID, let's say in 2019, okay, the points hovered around the 470s, low 470s, high 460s. Then COVID hit, and all of a sudden the borders were closed. So the government then stopped inviting people under the federal skilled worker class, and they started inviting people only for the Canadian experience class. And so when the government does an invitation, they skim the cream, and they skim the top numbers. And so let's say they want to have 3,000 people in the first nomination. They'll see who has the top score, top 3,000 people who have the top scores in which category. Once you take out federal skilled worker class, then the points for the Canadian experience class becomes lower and lower. And so it dipped in the summer of 2020. Then they started inviting some people for the federal skilled worker class in the winter of 2020, and numbers went up again. And then in 2021, they stopped inviting anyone for federal skilled worker class. And they had a huge emphasis on Canadian experience class. At one point, they just invited everybody who qualified under Canadian experience class. The lowest score was 40. And so they did that. And then you know, the numbers remain very, very historic lows for Canadian experience class. Those people in the federal skilled worker class, it didn't matter how high your scores were. You know, they just didn't get invited to apply. Then in September, this is the drama of express entry, okay? Then in September, the government suddenly just started being very, very slow. In October, they just stopped inviting anyone, whether Canadian experience class or federal skilled worker class, except those people who had provincial nominee programs, nominations. And so we're wondering what's happening. Then in January, a secret internal memo was leaked where it said that we over-invited people, and we need to stop inviting people because we filled up our inventory. I'm talking IRCC is saying to each other. We filled up the inventory for next year in 2022 by October of 2021. Okay, so this was a huge deal because the government has targets as to how many people they can invite. And if they fill up everyone for 2022 already in November of last year, then they can't be inviting that many people to apply. So they basically stopped the draws for everybody other than provincial nominees until July of this year. July of this year, they started inviting people again, but the draws have been very small. Before they were inviting 3,000, 4,000 people each draw. Now each draw was around 1,500 or so. And because the inventory has been building and building and building, the scores have been very high, above the 500s. We anticipate that the scores will remain high for a while because of the number of people who are in the pool, but eventually they are dropping, and hopefully, you know, you never know what it's going to be. Okay, you know, I had a client once who had a pretty low score. She had like 416, and the draws were at that point 480s. And she said to me, I said, I don't know that you'll get a chance to get invited to apply. And she said to me, you know what, Elizabeth, my mother said, you can't win the lottery if you don't buy a lottery ticket. So just put me into the pool. I said, okay, fair enough. And I put her in the pool, and suddenly the points dropped to 415. And she got invited to apply, and she got a permanent residence within 6 months after we put her in the pool. So that's, you never know. You might as well buy a lottery ticket sometimes. Okay. All right. That's enough for express entry. Well, Zia, maybe you can tell us about some of the provincial nominee programs for express entry.
Yeah, definitely. So like Elizabeth said, when we look at applying for permanent residence, you look at federal programs and then we look at provincial programs. So what these provincial nominee programs are, basically the federal government has said, okay, provinces, you create programs to help facilitate permanent residence within your provinces. And so provinces get to create their own streams and their own eligibility criteria, their own processes. So every province is a little different. What we're going to focus on, of course, is Ontario. In Ontario, we have streams that work with express entry and those that are outside of express entry. Since Elizabeth was just talking about express entry, I think that's probably the best place to start. So when we look at Ontario's express entry streams, the way it works is that you first have to be in the federal express entry pool, right? So you have to go through the steps that Elizabeth was just talking about, get a score and like create a profile, be in the pool. What happens here is that Ontario takes everybody in the federal express entry pool and distills it down to a smaller group of people based on who meets Ontario's requirements. And we'll talk about Ontario's streams in a moment, but basically they take the federal pool, make a smaller pool, and then with this smaller pool, what they do is they go into it and they issue what are called notifications of interest. So it's basically a letter that gets sent out to applicants and says, Ontario's interested in you, come apply to us. It's only after you receive a notification of interest that you're able to actually apply to the province through one of the express entry streams. And then once you apply, when your application's approved, you get the 600 points that Elizabeth was talking about earlier, which basically means that you're at the top of the express entry pool and likely to get an invitation within the next draw. So let's take a look at the categories. So in Ontario, the first one is called the Human Capital Priority Stream. Now, with the Human Capital Priority Stream, the minimum education requirement for this program is that you need to have at least a bachelor's degree. Okay, so very important. That doesn't mean that it necessarily has to be done in Canada, but overall in your profile, you do have to indicate that you have at least a bachelor's degree. Now, when Ontario looks at the Human Capital Priority Stream, and when they look at the express entry pool and they're doing their draws, they're not inviting everyone who qualifies through the Human Capital Priority Stream. What they're also doing is they're looking at your CRS score, and they are looking at the area that you have, the occupation that you have work experience in. Because the numbers for provincial nominees are limited, so Ontario only has so many nominations that they can issue in a year, they also have to be selective in who they're issuing notifications of interest to. And so with the Human Capital Priority Stream, what we've seen them do recently is look at the CRS points of your profile and also the area that you have, the occupation that you've listed that you have work experience in. And so when Ontario does a draw, they send out these notifications of interest, and then they post on their updates page what those criteria is for the draw. So we don't know in advance which occupations they're generally going to do, which they're going to select. Now, with that being said, what we have seen in the past is that they've broken it down into tech-based draws and other draws. Okay, when we're looking at the tech-based draws, they're looking at occupations that are generally tech focused. So software engineer, for example, software programmer, and then we have other occupations that do change from time to time. The second program that Ontario has is the French speaking skilled worker. Now, like Elizabeth said, you're gonna hear that anyone who is who is proficient in French, you have a couple more options available to you. For the French-speaking skilled worker stream, you do also need to have a bachelor's degree, but very importantly, Ontario is looking at your proficiency in both French and English. Okay, so you do need to meet the Canadian level benchmark of 7 in French in all areas of that French test and 6 in English. Okay, and again, when they're doing draws, they're posting afterwards the points that they're drawing for. The last one is the skilled trade stream. Now, with this program, there are a list of occupations that Ontario that is eligible for this particular program. With that list, though, you do also have to have at least 1 year of experience in Ontario in one of those particular trades within the past 2 years. Okay, and at the time of your application, you do need to currently hold a work permit, and that work experience that you've completed needs to have been on a work permit. Okay, so skilled trade stream, yes, it's an express entry stream, but it is for specific occupations. So it's not the general program where any occupation will qualify. So those are the express entry streams. Now, if we look at the other side, there are, like I said, non-express entry streams that Ontario does have as well. With all of the non-express entry streams, the process of applying is that Ontario has a separate pool, so they have their own system that you first have to go into. So as of last year, Ontario has introduced their own expression of interest system that applies to all of their non-express entry streams. So when you qualify, and we'll talk about the programs in a moment, but when you qualify, the first step is to create a profile for the particular stream, sorry, for the particular stream that you're looking to go into the pool for. So every stream that we're going to talk about has a different pool that you would have to enter in order to be considered for that particular program. Now, when you create a profile, you go into the pool for your stream and you get allocated points. Now, when we look at the point system here, when we talked about express entry, for example, it was the same point system regardless of which program you qualified under. For these non-express entry streams in Ontario, they have different criteria depending on which stream you're looking to apply under. So what this means is that, yes, Ontario has a set of a points-based system, but which factors apply depend on the stream that you qualify under. So when we're looking at the different programs, and again, we'll talk about those in a moment, the particular areas that you get points for will vary. Now, overall, when we're looking at Ontario's system, Ontario gives points for Canadian work experience, for your area of study, your language proficiency, where you have studied, so where in Ontario you studied, and of course, if you're outside of the GTA, like you are with Nipissing, you get additional points for having studied outside of the GTA. What we don't see in the points system for Ontario is anything about age. Okay, so Ontario's system, while it does still look at work experience, education, language, we do not see age as a factor, right? We see that in express entry being a huge part of your point system, but there are no points being awarded in Ontario's system for age. The other thing that we don't see, which is different from express entry, is there are no points for your spouse. So if you do have a spouse, your spouse's background would not actually affect what your points are in the Ontario pool. Okay. Now, once you qualify, you go into the pool for your particular program, you get allocated a score, and then from there, Ontario goes into that system and does a draw. And again, they're inviting the highest scoring individuals to come apply to the province. Now, there is no set schedule for when Ontario does draws. What they do is they announce draws after they have completed it. So after the draw is completed, they update their website to say what that the draw had happened and what the criteria was. So in terms of what the score was, the minimum score for that particular stream. So that's the EOI system. Let's take a look at a couple of the actual programs that fall into these non-express entry EOI system streams for Ontario. The first two that I want to look at are the master's and PhD streams. So Ontario has two streams, one for people who have completed their master's, the other for someone who's completed their PhD in Ontario. Now, these programs do require that you apply within 2 years of your actual graduation, okay? But very importantly, they do not have any job offer or work experience requirements. So right away, when you finish your program of study, you're able to go through the master's or the PhD stream, even before you have completed any work experience here in Ontario. Now, you do need to, when Ontario is looking at who qualifies for these streams, they are looking for people who are, one of the criteria is that you're not looking to pursue any further studies in the immediate future, at least. So when you're going through these programs, when you're applying for your permanent residence, you can't be, let's say you finished your master's program, you can't now be looking at doing your PhD while you're going through this particular program. So they are looking for people who are looking to actually start working. Now, again, this does go through the EOI system. So you would have to create a profile, go into the pool, and then get selected from there before you're able to actually apply to the program. Another stream that Ontario has that are non-express entry based are their employer-based streams. So these are for individuals who have a permanent full-time job offer in Ontario. Now, when we're talking about the employer-based streams, we have requirements on the employer, on the position, and on the applicant. So let's start by looking at the employer requirements. For the company that's supporting your application, they have to be providing you with a full-time permanent job offer. Okay, so very important that you do have a permanent job offer. And what we mean when we say permanent is that there is no end date. It's of an indeterminate length. Okay. With the company itself, depending on whether they're inside or outside of the Greater Toronto Area, there are different numbers for them in terms of what they have to be able to demonstrate. So for an employer outside of the Greater Toronto Area, they have to be able to show that they have grossed at least $500,000 in the past fiscal year, and that they currently have 3 full-time employees that are either Canadian citizens or permanent residents. Those two numbers change a bit for an employer that's inside of the Greater Toronto Area. The gross income goes up to $1 million, so they have to be able to show that they grossed at least $1 million in their past fiscal year, and that they currently have 5 employees that are full-time and are Canadian citizens or permanent residents. Now, regardless of whether they're inside or outside of the GTA, they do have to be in business for at least 3 years before they can qualify to support an application through the employer-based streams. So when we're talking about the employer-based streams, there's actually 3 different employer-based streams. The first one that I want to look at is the international student stream. Okay, so this is for individuals who have completed a qualifying program in Ontario. Now, when we talk about a qualifying program, either you've done a program that's at least 2 years in length, or you've completed a 1-year postgraduate program. Now, when we talk about a postgraduate program, what Ontario is looking for is that they're looking at the entry requirements, the admission requirements for your program of study. For Ontario, for you to qualify to apply through the international student stream, if you've completed a 1-year program, those admission requirements for your program of study at your school needs to be a bachelor's degree or higher. If the entry requirements say that you're admissible to a program when you've done a bachelor's or diploma or a bachelor's or work experience. That inclusion of the or diploma or work experience means that that particular program of study is excluded from making you eligible under the international student stream. Okay, so to go over that again, either you've completed a 2-year program and then we don't care what the admission requirements are, or you've done a 1-year post-grad program that requires only a degree, at least a degree, in order to be eligible for the program. Now, with the international student stream, you do need to apply again within 2 years of your graduation, and the job offer that you're being offered does have to be a high-skilled position, and you're being provided at least what's called the entry-level wage for that occupation. Now, what we don't see here in terms of requirements for this international student stream is any work experience requirement. So again, this is a program that you'd be able to look at as soon as you finish your program of study here in Ontario. The second stream is the skilled worker stream. Now, with the skilled worker stream, you do need to have at least 2 years of work experience within the past 5 years, and that work experience needs to be in the same occupation as the position that you're being offered, that you're using to support your ONP application. Okay, so we're looking at the occupation that you have a job offer in. You need to have 2 years of experience in that same occupation, and that has to be within the 5 years. Now, where you've completed that work experience doesn't matter. So whether that's inside of Canada, outside of Canada, either one would be eligible for the skilled worker program, but you have to be able to show that 2 years of work experience within the past 5 years. When we're talking about wages here for the skilled worker stream, employers do have to be offering you what's called a median wage, so the prevailing wage for your occupation that you have a job offer in. And then the last one is the in-demand occupations. Now, for this stream, Ontario has a list of occupations that are eligible for this program. And you need to have at least 9 months of authorized work experience in Ontario in that occupation before you're eligible to apply through the in-demand stream. Now, this is the one stream that we see that does not, when we're looking at that occupation list, it does include occupations that are considered low skilled, right? So when we talked about the international student, when we looked at the skilled worker, when we talked about express entry, all of those programs required high skilled job offers, high skilled work experience. This in-demand program, the occupation list that Ontario has, includes low skilled positions. So this is one of those programs that we have here where if you have a low skilled job offer, you're able to use that to apply for permanent residence in this program. Now, everything that we're talking about here, you do want to sit down and think about whether, if you're coming to Canada, if you're here studying, your spouse may be working in Canada, and your spouse may be that person that's able to actually go through this program and apply for their your permanent residence while you're studying, right? So it is really important to sit down and think. There's many different programs that work for you, that may work for you, but looking at which one's the best, which one would be the earliest, it's something to think about when you're planning your immigration strategy. And this, like Elizabeth said, is why it's important to start thinking about these programs and these streams early.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about, we went from the federal government to the Ontario government, and now we're going to talk about the city where Nipissing University is located. It's very good that the community that you're going to go to school in is North Bay, because if it is, and you get a job offer in North Bay, then you could qualify for the Rnet program. And how it works is, to qualify, you need to have either a 1 year of qualifying work experience where you are an employee. Self-employed work does not count. The occupation, if you're looking at the work experience, it has to be within 1 degree with regard to the occupation. So if you have a B occupation job offer, you can do a C or B or A, etc. It's a little bit complicated, but the work experience, you have to have that 1 year of work experience. Or if you don't have the work experience, but you graduated from a study program of 2 years with 18 months in the community. So, at least most of the study has to be where you're physically in North Bay. Or if you're doing a master's or PhD program, it could be even a 1 year program. You could also qualify as well. You're a full-time student and you apply within 18 months of your graduation. You could just use that study program instead of the work experience to qualify as well. Very important though, is you need to have a qualifying job offer in the community. So while you guys are studying, don't waste time and just not look for work. Even volunteer work is very important. You want to get your foot in the door. You want to get to know people in the community. You want to get to know employers. If this is the program that you think would be the easiest, and really this program is a fantastic program, you can usually get your permanent residence within a year. And so it's a good program, but you do need to have that job offer in the community as well. Your language shouldn't be a problem since you're going to Nipissing. And either you're working in Canada, which you probably would, or have settlement funds as well. Okay, so going back to just my first comment that I told you guys, that you guys have a big advantage in going to Nipissing University. I hope you guys can see what I mean. Okay, starting off with express entry. Okay, what do you have to do to qualify for express entry? Well, first of all, you can't be going to Quebec. Check, you're not going to Quebec. Okay, great. Then we go to the Ontario program. You're outside of the GTA. Fantastic, right? You get extra points, a lot of extra points for being selected out there. If you're doing a master's program, you can qualify for the master's or PhD program if you studied in Ontario, right? And that's one of the only programs in the country where you don't even need to have a job offer and you can qualify. If you are, if you graduate from a program that is 2 years, or if it's 1 year and it's a post-grad program like Zia was talking about, then you can qualify for international student class if you have a job offer. Okay. Again, job offers mean a lot. Getting that work experience, getting that job offer from employers is very, very key. So, co-op programs are fantastic as you get your foot in the door. Getting some work experience, getting out there is very, very key. And don't waste your time while you're studying in looking for those opportunities, okay? And then we're going to the Rnet program, which you guys are situated in North Bay. You guys are the only university in North Bay and in a lot of the other northern communities where this program is eligible, where, so you guys are very, very well situated. Now, what do you do next?
Yeah, so very importantly, you need to have an immigration plan, right? So you want to know what exactly it is that you want to achieve here in terms of your immigration and how you're going to get there. I think it's really important. We've gone through a lot of the different programs today, but this is really just the tip of the iceberg, right? It's really, there's so much more in terms of planning, in terms of knowing what the different options are, which ones you qualify for, like I kind of mentioned earlier, looking at the family unit as a whole. So if you're here studying, maybe your spouse is getting the work experience that they need so that you're able to get permanent residence sooner. It really is important to sit down early and create an immigration plan that's individualized to you. So I do recommend sit down with a lawyer, go through your backgrounds and figure out what your immigration goals are and what the plans, what your route is to getting to meet those immigration goals.
So once you have a goal, now you got to do it, okay? It's not easy to immigrate to Canada. I like to say, like I tell everyone, I love my job and it's because I have the best clients. Immigrants are very, very special people. You guys just taking that step to leave everything behind, all the people that you know, all the, the laws, the systems, everything, your contacts behind, and you're going to a brand new country, that takes a lot of guts. And so you guys have the guts, you have to have the determination now to get to your goal, okay? Things like studying and practicing for your English exams. You would have studied for all these other things. The English exam is one of the most important things that you're going to have to study for, okay? Make sure you do that. Determining, is the program that I am doing, is that enough to get to my permanent residence? Maybe 1-year program may or may not be enough. Maybe you need to do another program. Think about this in the beginning, not after you graduated, after you've completed your programs, after you go and apply for the work permit, you work, and then you figure out, oh no, I don't have enough, okay? Do it at the very beginning. That's why we're doing this session with you guys now. And then, yeah, look at your work permit. You need to, as you can see, getting a job offer, getting work experience, other than the master's class, for OIMP, it's very, very important for permanent residence as well.
We talked about this right from the beginning of the presentation today. While you're here in Canada, it is really important that you stay in status, that you maintain your temporary residence while you're physically here. If you lose status, if you're here without status, it becomes much, much more difficult to try and get that back, if at all, and then be able to use that and apply for permanent residence. It becomes a lot trickier. And so it is really important that while you're here, keep your status. And the second part then, and Elizabeth did talk about this a bit earlier, is make sure you're not misrepresenting yourself, right? Elizabeth talked about what that would look like. And it can be even an innocent misrepresentation, right? It's something that you may not know, but the penalties for that misrep is that you could be barred from applying to Canada for a period of 5 years. And then even after those 5 years, it becomes a lot more difficult. As you can imagine, that application would be highly scrutinized when you are looking to apply again after.
And finally, if your application is rejected, you need to contact a lawyer right away. And I just wanted to emphasize here that there is a very, very big difference in Canada between a lawyer and a consultant. There are consultants, and the problem is with Canadian politics is that, unfortunately, consultants are not properly regulated, and it's been like the parliament has tried to regulate them for many, many years, but they're not trained properly. They don't go to law school, and a lot of times there's a lot of fraud in that community. If you must hire a lawyer who's good, hire a lawyer who knows what they're talking about with regard to immigration, okay? Hopefully you would have hired the lawyer before you actually do an application, and hopefully your application is not rejected. If you do it yourself and your application is rejected, you need to contact a lawyer right away, okay? Don't wait, and don't try to fix it yourself, okay? Don't try to get a consultant to fix it for you. The consultant will not be able to go to court, okay? Federal court notice, if you feel like something is unjust, you want to go to the court, the federal court notice period is very, very strict. It's only 15 days from the date that your decision is made if your application is inside Canada. If it's outside of Canada, then it's 60 days from the date of rejection outside of Canada, okay? And, sometimes you'll call the call center and you might think they're a friend. They're not your friend, okay? They represent the government. And like I said, what did I say many, many times? Government does not care, okay? You can call them, they might seem like they care. Oh, yes, okay, great. But whatever they tell you, it doesn't mean anything, because they can tell you wrong things, and they do tell you wrong. You can call them 3 times. They probably give you 3 different answers, and you can rely on what they're telling you. And if it's wrong, then it's too bad. Too bad, so sad. That's your problem, okay? So one of the things that they might tell you when you call them is to go and write a letter to immigration explaining why you think this is wrong or why, but if you don't know what to write legally to try to persuade an officer to reconsider your application and they send you back and say, nope, then you go to a lawyer. If you come to me and you say, oh, Elizabeth, this is what happened. I said, unfortunately, you already did a reconsideration and I can't file another reconsideration for you because immigration only allows you to have one reconsideration. Okay. Also, time, very, very important. Okay. Restoration of status, you may or may not be out of status for that. You may or may not be out of status to apply for your post-grad work permit, for example. It doesn't matter. Like I said, immigration doesn't care. It doesn't matter what the reason for the delay is. If you're out of status, if you're out of time, you're out of time. Okay. So please keep these things in mind when you are going through your journey. It's not easy. People fall through the cracks right away. Find someone, and who you trust, who can represent you in your case as well. All right. So anyway, this is our information. If you want to have a consultation about your own particular situation, you can contact us. Email is probably the easiest way to do it. Let us know you're coming from Nipissing. We always offer students from Nipissing a discount to do the consultation with us. It's like $100 for the student rate. Okay. All right, let's start answering some questions. What kind of questions do we have?
Okay, the first one, Elizabeth, is can you explain the age factor again in permanent residence? So how age affects your ability to apply? And I think this was specifically for express entry.
Yes, because age is the only thing that matters for age, I think, is express entry. OIP doesn't care, and neither does Rnet. So age is important if we're going through express entry. If that's the way that is the best way to do it. Express entry is nice. If you get invited to apply, it's normally a 6-month processing time. Sometimes we've had applications decided in 2 weeks. But that's not normal. Don't depend on that. But normally it's 6 months. Okay, and so it's one of the fastest things to do if you're invited to apply. And so if your age is higher and your age points therefore are lower, you might not be able to get an invitation to apply for express entry. Okay, so we'll have to determine for each person what is the best path to go about. Okay, what category does a post-baccalaureate be invited? So basically, I think Zia, they're talking about the programs where it's not a master's, it's a post-bac. But Laura, am I correct in assuming everyone who does this program is required to already have a bachelor's degree?
Yes, that's the requirement.
Okay.
And these are 2-year programs.
Oh, these are 2-year programs as well. Yeah. Fantastic.
Okay. Yeah, so if it's a 2-year program, and I think this came in during the OINP portion, if it's a 2-year program, then all 2-year programs would be eligible for the international student stream through the employer job offer routes.
Right, and RNIP as well. You also get points for express entry as well.
Yeah. Okay, Elizabeth, since some of the occupations are changing from high to low skilled, what happens if an applicant is looking to go through the skilled worker employer-based pathway, but 1 year into their work experience, which was high skilled at the time, those changes come into effect, and now that occupation is low skilled? Will those individuals be grandfathered, or will they need to start the 2-year work experience process again?
Very good question. I don't know exactly because they haven't come out with the regulations, but I'm speculating that when the rules come out, they will look at what exactly you have, what are the rules at the time of application. So like I said, immigration doesn't really care about people. If you did do something that's high skilled before, that's considered low skilled now, I think it would probably be counted as low skilled. On the other hand, if you did something that was considered low skilled, remember there's 16 occupations that was low skilled that now will be high skilled, then that's an advantage for you. So some of the important ones that we've seen are things like personal support workers are going to be high skilled. Some of the construction, I think, is going to be high skilled. Truck drivers are, I think, are going to be skilled, right?
Transport,
and so some of these things are going to be good for people who were doing those kind of work. And when the new system comes in place, keep in mind this system is going to come into place very, very soon. Probably, I think they said by the end of the year for this year as well.
And with that being said, I mean, we also have a sense right now which occupations that are high skilled that we're expecting to become low skilled, right? So that also does help as well.
When these changes come into place, we normally will have a webinar and newsletter as well. So if you're on the list, we'll invite you guys to join us as well for those. Okay, so what kind of documents are required to travel after getting a study permit visa?
So when you apply online for your study permit, you'll get your visa inserted into your passport. So obviously you do have to carry your original passport with you. But the second thing that you'll receive is your approval letter. That's your POE instruction letter. You have to take that with you when you're traveling. So when you enter Canada, you're able to use that to actually get your physical study permit. So the study permit itself only gets issued upon your first entry to Canada. Elizabeth, the next question here is, can I apply for permanent residence at the end of my first year of my master's degree program?
Depends on what kind of permanent residence, but you won't get credit for the master's until you complete the entire master's. Okay, what will be the duration of the postgrad work permit? Is the course duration is 2 years.
So if you're doing a 2-year program, you'll be eligible for the maximum duration of postgrad work permit, which is 3 years. Elizabeth, this is a great question. Does the study permit allow you to work while you're taking a break or a leave from school?
Okay, so if it's a scheduled break, like if it's the school, everybody is taking a scheduled break in the summer, for example, okay, you can certainly work, you can work full time. But if you are on authorized leave, so you ask the school, can you give me authorized leave for a semester because there's something going on in my life, I can't do it. You can take the authorized leave, but you cannot work at all. Not full-time, not part-time, not at all, okay, during the authorized leave. If you just decide to take a break or leave from school by yourself without even telling the school, then you're out of status after 90 days, okay? Then you're done, okay, finished, okay? So don't do that, all right. How often do the rules change, Zia?
The rules can change at any point in time. Ircc is able to release new instructions on any day. So it could be that you get a change frequently, sometimes they're not, it varies, but they are able to make changes at any point. So again, this is where Elizabeth was talking about how we send out newsletters. Anytime there is a significant change, we do send that out by newsletter. Elizabeth, is it a good idea to apply for permanent residence before I apply for my postgrad work permit?
Well, everybody's situation is different. I can't just answer that for you right now, unfortunately, because I don't know what your situation is. Maybe you already have a good chance to get permanent residence. Normally, if someone has a good chance to get permanent residence, I say don't wait because the rules do change and you may not have that opportunity again. Maybe you might not, you need your postgrad work permit. So come for a consultation and we can make a decision then. Would it be possible to change a 1-year post-bac certificate to a 2-year post-bac certificate? I think that's something that Laura you'll have to go to the school and ask, I guess, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and also remember your study permit is based on a certain length. So if you want to change your program, that's absolutely fine for immigration. You just have to make sure that you apply to extend your study permit, apply to extend it before your study permit expires, right? Implied status. If you apply after it expires, then you cannot study until you get a new study permit, which means you might waste an entire semester that way. Okay.
Elizabeth, the next question is for RNIP. Does previous work experience count when you're applying for permanent residence through North Bay?
Yes, you can, depending on the work experience. Can I invite my family to join me in Canada if I have a valid postgrad work permit?
Yes, you can. When you have a postgrad work permit, your family, so your spouse or any dependent children are able to accompany you to Canada. In order for your spouse to get an open spousal work permit, though, you do have to be working in a high-skilled position, and you have to be able to show that when you submit their application.
All right, so I think we are just at the 10 o'clock mark, guys. Thank you so much for your questions. And thank you, Laura and Nipissing University for inviting us. It's always a pleasure to be here with you guys.
thank you so much, Sia and Elizabeth, for this, for your time and for this really important and informative session. And I want also to thank all our students that joined today. And I want to let them know, taking this opportunity too, that next week on August 5th, we're going to have a pre-departure session, an IAM, and they're going to get the details really soon. But I want them just to be aware that that is coming. But thank you so much, Sia and Elizabeth, again. We really appreciate your time and your expertise.
Our
Thank you
pleasure.
so much.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good school year.
Take care.
Bye-bye.